Hi there, and welcome to Green Shoe Conversations. I'm Stephanie Cochran. I'm the Executive Director for the Green Shoe Foundation, and this is episode 21. Really excited today. This month has been Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have been bringing you some very special people to kind of highlight different things about mental health awareness and also highlight our team. And today I have Teresa with me. She is our clinical director and has been with Green Shoe pretty much from the beginning and coming in. So I'm really excited for us to kind of talk and hear about her. Teresa, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. So when did you start with Green Shoe?
October of 2016. So it's been 4 years, the 1st of October.
Absolutely. And the first groups were held July of 2016. So
Yes.
I've heard you say you only missed the first 3 groups, and then the rest you've been a part of.
I have an exciting part of them. Yes. So I did miss the first 3, but I've been here ever since. So.
That is awesome. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. I'm from Oklahoma originally, grew up in a small town in northwestern Oklahoma. I was the youngest of 3 children, and my first degree was in dental hygiene, my bachelor's degree many years ago, and I did that for a short time, and I became a mom, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 16 years, and then I went back to school and got my master's in counseling and have been doing that for the last 20 years.
So what made you decide to go into counseling?
When I was married for 20 years, and during that time, when we went through a difficult divorce. I went through a difficult divorce, and also that same year, my dad died, and I decided that I hadn't been working in the dental field for 16 years, and I didn't want to go back to doing that. And what I originally wanted, my favorite class in school, I remember in college at OU, was social psychology, but I had no idea what to do with social psychology until later, I realized what counseling was and what the field of psychology was, and it was about relationships. And so that's what sent me back to school to get my master's in counseling.
And you're kind of an ever-learning adult. One thing I know I've gotten from you, I mean, I know you won't show it, but you always have like piles of books on your desk, and they're always the next read. It's like, anything you can get your hands on, it's all about learning. And you've gone back to school now too, correct?
I have. I've started working on my doctorate in education in community care and counseling with an emphasis in traumatology. So I've completed my first 3 classes, and I'm really have learned a lot already and excited about that endeavor. It's hard to imagine at my age that I'm going back, but I love it. And it's funny because one of my nicknames in high school was Bookworm. Because I love to study and I love to read, and I still do. I feel like if you stop learning, you stop growing and you stop living. And so I really am a big proponent of continuing to learn.
But I love your enthusiasm with it because it just pours out. Anytime you read a book, it's dog-eared, it's the spines. I mean, you're like, look at this, and so I love that enthusiasm with it. Well, yeah. So after you got your degree in counseling, then kind of talk a little bit about where that led you. Where did you work at, and what types of counseling did you do?
I first started at North Care, a community mental health center, and I started out doing screening, answering the calls, and anywhere from crisis, life-threatening emergencies, mental health emergencies, to just individuals seeking help for everyday needs. But I was at North Care for 10 years, and I just learned so much at a community mental health center working with individuals who have severe mental illness that I stayed, and I first started doing groups. I remember when I was under supervision for my licensure that my supervisor said, "You're going to do a women's depression group with me." And I said, "Oh, that sounds awful." And I immediately fell in love with group work because I saw how the individuals, the ladies, supported each other and grew and learned. And little did I know that that's where I would end up, as my passion is group work. I volunteered at Calm Waters for about 5 years doing group work for individuals going through divorce and grief, loss of life in family members. And so I volunteered there. And then I worked at Sunbeam Family Services for 3 years as the clinical director and enjoyed that, and have done some individual therapy along the way. I've been a lot in administration. I also did a lot of substance abuse groups when I was at North Care. Was over the drug court program. That was an amazing program to be over and to watch the change, how that impacts individuals' lives. And so I ended up here at Green Shoe, been here 4 years, and group work, and I love what we do here.
Yeah. So why Green Shoe?
When I first heard about Green Shoe, I was at Sunbeam as the clinical director, and someone said, "You need to look into this." One of the gals that worked for me, Julia Jernigan, said, "Teresa, you need to look into this. I think this would be right up your alley." And so when I found out about Green Shoe, and I had never heard of Pia Melody before, never read her book, so I immediately read the book, Facing Codependence, and then I immediately read her Intimacy Factor and Love Addiction. I couldn't get enough when I found out what her model was about, because why I went into counseling really was to figure out why people do the things that they do. And this model explains to me how our childhood impacts how we think, how we act, what we feel, what we believe about ourselves. And that's what drew me to it, was Pia's model of codependency, developmental immaturity. Some of us didn't learn how to grow up and be mature adults because of what we experienced in childhood, the trauma we experienced in childhood. So that's why I love Green Shoe.
And you've got experience with all types of therapy, both with individual, with groups, groups that were short-term groups, long-term, all of that. And listening, especially to you and Steve and Rebecca, talk about how the difference in this model, and even just the 5 days that people spend here, is it's not just about putting a Band-Aid on something or just trying to fix something for the moment, but you really watch people heal that trauma.
It is amazing, amazing work. I have learned more in the last 4 years about trauma and the impacts of trauma and therapy and the body and the brain. And then I have learned in probably the first 16 in my career. And so it's just an amazing opportunity to let people talk about what they experienced in childhood, to tell their story, to be heard, and how that changes them and the other people listening, and me and the therapist that doing this, and help them heal, to see that I'm not a problem, that I do matter, and that what happened to me mattered, and I can heal from that. That we don't have to, somebody doesn't have to come say, "I'm sorry for what happened." They don't have to do that. You can heal on your own. And that's what's so amazing about this, because our parents, most of them, didn't intend to harm us. I always use the example, usually on Monday morning, that when my mother said to me, I only wanted 2 children and I was number 3. That message that I got was, you weren't wanted. And I didn't understand how that impacted me until I learned this model, and how the things that were said to children, how it impacts their thoughts, how they believe, what they believe about their value in themselves. And so they didn't intend to harm us, but the impact, and that impacted our relationship with ourselves and with other people.
Wow. So with this being kind of Mental Health Awareness Month, for you, what is some issues and topics related to mental health that are very passionate?
And I think relationships and childhood trauma is just paramount to me. And that, in fact, that's what my doctorate is studying, is about the trauma that we received as a child and how it impacts us. And it impacts our society. It impacts our families, individuals, families, communities. everybody. And so that is a really a passion of mine, wanting to see people heal individually, which will, I hear every week, I went home and did something different with my child, and the impact that that will have, or with my spouse, on families and on communities then, and our nation. I mean, it's just, it ripples, but it starts with childhood and how we're treated in childhood, and what we learned and didn't learn in childhood, and the healing that can take place when you do the hard work of looking back at what we experienced.
Absolutely. And I know that's something, especially in our community, that's being talked about a lot with the childhood trauma and trying to focus on the child to try to stop the cycle. And I know we get to see that because we've had parents come through, we've had siblings, we've had partners and generations, and just to stop that and see how that, can help, with that. It's not just, yes, you absolutely want to help that one child, but then what you do for future generations is, yeah.
By helping the child, though, you have to help the parents, because the parents are the supportive, they're taking care of the child, they're nurturing, they're affirming, they're setting limits. So a child only can develop as much as that parent puts into them, and how they treat them. And so it goes to having adults who understand what it's like to be a healthy parent, and how to take care of that child and nurture that child. And so it can't start with the kids. It needs to start with the adults.
Sure.
And teaching the kids then, yes, they need to learn how to express their emotions in a healthy way. Are they safe to express their emotions in a healthy way in their families? Because we repeat the patterns that we learned in childhood if we don't learn something different.
Okay, so what are some hobbies? What are things you do outside of Green Shoe?
Okay. My favorite thing is, one of my favorite things is putting on my Gigi hat, we call it, being a grandma, and playing with my grandkids, and reading them books, and going on adventures. I had them all day Saturday, and it was so much fun to feed the fish bread, and to watch to take the hike and break the cattail off walking around the little pond. And so just to have fun with my grandkids is one of the things that I love to do. Another thing is, I do like to cook, and I know people that have known me for a long time know that I love to bake. And
yes,
so
we've got to enjoy those.
Yes, so I love to cook and bake. And I also, for self-care, I do a lot of reading, only pleasure reading, and a lot of times it's my faith reading, reading my Bible, and getting grounded in that truth and that knowledge of who I am and who my God is, and that keeps me grounded, and keeps me stable, and keeps me healthy, and grateful. So grateful for where I am at this time in my life, and because for several years I was really in a complaining mode about, I didn't want this, I don't want to be divorced, I don't want my kids to live in a family from a divorce. But I came to see the gifts that pain has, and the gifts of, and the growth. Through the hardest times in my life have I grown the most. So I'm grateful now at this time of my life, and I enjoy family, and enjoy my work, but I also enjoy being home, and I love gardening too, working out in the yard, growing flowers. And when COVID came this year, my flowers looked better than they ever looked before, because we were home so much. So I enjoyed being out in the yard.
I know, I actually had flower beds this year because I had time to do that. Okay, so each one I've ended with what I'm calling rapid questions. Okay. And so I'm just going to ask you some quick and fun questions, and just answer the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay, so first one, favorite city in the U.S. other than the one you live in?
Oh, my first thought was New York City. It's a nice place to visit. I never want to live there, but I was just in awe of the enormity, and it was just the museums, everything. So I would say New York City.
New York. Okay. Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas, no doubt about that.
Favorite junk food?
There's so many.
Actually, when I thought of this, I was like, oh, I wonder what she's going to answer.
Probably desserts, probably sweets, but I love pizza too. It's hard to choose between sweets and pizza. So.
Yeah, I think I would have won the pool on pizza if you'd said that. Okay, if you could go back in time to any period, when would it be?
When my kids were young, I loved my kids when they were young and the fun that we had. So that was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite cooking tool?
First thing that comes to mind is spatula. I don't know why, but I turn a lot of pancakes with a spatula, so I don't know. So
there you go. And you're going to see I have a lot of food questions in here. Cake or pie?
Oh, mercy. I think cake.
Okay.
Because, cheesecake is a cake, so I'd say cake.
Yeah, that works. Okay, and Cinderella or Snow White?
Oh, Cinderella. To my demise, I thought life would be like Cinderella. And
right.
Yeah, so.
Well, and she had the shoes, and so I know
that's one of my yes weaknesses is too many shoes. So absolutely. So yeah.
Well, and my last question you kind of already talked about, but I think it's so important to reiterate is kind of your favorite self-care techniques. You know, and you talked about being grounded in your faith and grounded in that gratitude. And again, talking about mental health awareness, it's so important for all of us to have those self-care things. So anything else you'd want to add?
Whatever we didn't get sometimes in childhood. I love massages too. And since COVID, I haven't been back, and I miss that because touch is one of my love languages, and missing that massage is. So whatever you didn't get, treat yourself, pamper yourself. What's that little girl inside of me? And that's buying new shoes. You know, it makes me feel so special because it was so special when I was young to go get a new pair of shoes. It didn't happen, but usually twice a year, one spring, one summer, and one winter. And I just felt so special. And I think that's part of the reason I love those shoes. But whatever you feel like you need and want that makes you feel loved and cared for. So
Thank you for that. And thanks for doing this. I really want to encourage everybody to. Teresa's written several blogs that are on our website. So definitely go to greenshoe.org. It's a great way to find out more about our program and the retreat and get more information too. Again, our evergreen blog and more podcasts. Teresa talks a lot about the model. So I'm encouraging everyone to kind of go back and look at all of that. But thanks for kind of listening in and hearing about us. Next week, we're going to have a really fun end of the month mental health awareness. We're going to be featuring one of our fun community members, and all of us are going to be coming on with some of our special friends. So check that out, and we will talk to you guys next week.